There's one experience every human shares. Something every person will eventually face. For most of history, no one knew. No one knew how it truly felt. Then, completely by accident, doctors recorded it. For the very first time ever. What they saw wasn't what anyone expected. And it raises a surprisingly warm question. If you're enjoying this, hit like. Subscribe and drop a comment. It helps. What does your brain do exactly? In those final seconds before you die? Scientists spent decades wondering, unable to check. The brain works in complete darkness usually. Hidden behind bone, wires, and time. Then one ordinary hospital day changed everything. 2016, an 87-year-old man in hospital. He came in for a routine reason. Doctors were checking him for epilepsy. So they hooked him up to an EEG. EEG means electroencephalogram, a mouthful, we know. Simply put, it measures your brain's electricity. Small sensors sit gently on the scalp. They pick up tiny electrical brain signals. Normally, EEGs just track ordinary brain rhythms. This time, something unplanned happened instead. The hospital room was calm and ordinary. Soft daylight through the window, quiet monitors. A nurse checked on him gently, routinely. Nothing about that morning seemed unusual, really. Just another patient, another wire, another day. Until it very suddenly, quietly, wasn't. Mid-recording, the patient suffered a heart attack. His heart suddenly, unexpectedly, stopped beating. It was a medical emergency, not an experiment. But the EEG machine kept recording anyway. For the first time in history, a dying human brain was fully captured. Every second, before and after, on record. No one had ever seen this data before. Years later, in 2022, researchers analyzed it. Dr. Ujmal Zemmer led the study. He's a neurosurgeon who studies brain injury. His team looked closely at those 30 seconds. 30 seconds before and 30 seconds after. And they noticed something remarkable in the data. A surge of something called gamma waves. Gamma waves are a fast brainwave type. You see them when you recall memories. Or when you're dreaming, deeply focused, concentrating. This surge appeared right around cardiac arrest. And this wasn't the only time it appeared. Because it turns out, this wasn't unique. Something similar had already been seen before. In a completely different kind of experiment. Years earlier, in a very different lab. The story actually starts 9 years before. Long before anyone recorded a human brain. Long before Zemmer published his findings. It started with a very different question. Why did this take so long to record? You obviously can't plan a cardiac arrest. EEGs are rarely running at that exact moment. It requires an extraordinary, unplanned coincidence, honestly. 2013, University of Michigan. Dr. Jima Borjajan. She studies the brain after the heart stops. Her team worked with rats, not humans. They monitored brain activity during cardiac arrest. Watching every wave, every signal, closely. What they found genuinely surprised the researchers. Right after the heart stopped completely, a brief burst of brain activity appeared. Highly synchronized, brain regions working together. In perfect, tight, electrical rhythm together. The lab was clean, calm, quiet. Researchers watched screens, not the animal itself. In some frequencies, it was even stronger. Stronger than during normal, wakeful consciousness. That's a strange, striking finding to explain. A dying brain, briefly, wildly, more active. This happened years before the human case. Already pointing toward the same odd pattern. 2 different species, 2 different decades. Yet the same electrical story kept appearing. Gamma waves show up in other moments too. Deep meditation, REM sleep, sudden insight, too. Moments of intense focus or vivid dreaming. So this isn't some totally unfamiliar brain state. So what could this activity actually mean? Researchers have one careful, cautious hypothesis. Maybe the brain is replaying old memories. One last flood of familiar, meaningful moments. It's just a hypothesis, not a proven fact. But it's a compelling one to consider. You've probably heard the phrase before. Your whole life flashing before your eyes. People have described this for generations. Maybe gamma waves explain where that comes from. Picture a favorite childhood birthday, sunlit and warm. A summer afternoon at the beach, laughing. A hand held tightly, warm and familiar. An old photograph, slightly faded, deeply loved. These are the kinds of memories, theoretically. Gamma waves might be quietly replaying, briefly. Not scientifically confirmed, but wonderfully possible. A brain revisiting its best moments, perhaps. A dog running across a grassy backyard. The smell of rain on warm pavement. A song that always made you smile. Small, ordinary moments, somehow deeply important. Here's something else worth understanding clearly. Death isn't usually one single, instant switch. It's more of a gradual, layered process. Different organs, different cells, fade at different rates. The brain can stay active minutes longer. Cells don't all die at once, together. Let's be clear, this remains unproven, tentative. Scientists don't yet know exactly what it means. It's not evidence of an afterlife, either. Not proof against one, not proof for one. Just a curious electrical pattern, honestly documented. Real data, careful scientists, cautious interpretation only. That caution is actually good, healthy science. And there's one more thread worth following. Imagine your own brain, decades from now. Still working, quietly, until its very last moment. Maybe reaching for a familiar face, a memory. Not something to fear, something almost tender. Because this might explain something else entirely. Something reported by people who were resuscitated. People whose hearts had briefly, medically, stopped. And were then successfully brought back to life. Dr. Sam Parnia studies exactly these cases. He works at NYU, in critical care. His research project is called AWARE. It studies consciousness during cardiac arrest events. Interviewing survivors about what they remember. What did they experience, if anything at all? Many patients described strikingly similar experiences afterward. A sense of calm, clarity, vivid awareness. The AWARE study spans multiple international hospitals. Patients wear devices during resuscitation, just in case. Researchers compare timing, brain activity, and memory. Some described watching events from somewhere above. Others recalled vivid memories, replaying in detail. These accounts are subjective, hard to verify precisely. But they line up with the gamma findings. Heightened brain activity, right when least expected. Could that explain these vivid, remembered experiences? Parnia connects it carefully, without overselling it. Not proof of anything beyond the physical. Just an intriguing question, still being studied. 3 separate discoveries, quietly pointing the same direction. Not everyone reports these vivid memory experiences. Many people recall absolutely nothing at all. Science studies both outcomes, equally, honestly. Since then, other researchers have looked closer, too. Additional case reports show similar late brain surges. The pattern keeps reappearing, case after case. Science builds slowly, one careful case at a time. So where does the science actually stand? Honestly, still early days, still developing research. These findings come from a handful of cases. Not thousands of patients, just a few. Scientists are deliberately cautious about big claims. More recordings are needed to be sure. More patients, more data, more careful analysis. That's not a weakness, that's how science works. Slow, careful, honest about its own limits. And that honesty deserves real respect too. So what can we actually take from this? Not fear, not a definitive final answer. Something gentler, a glimpse of active engagement. Your brain, it seems, doesn't just switch off. It stays remarkably active, right to the end. possibly even reaching for its favorite memories. That's a strangely comforting thought, isn't it? Science, quietly turning fear into simple wonder. Let's quickly retrace how we got here. 2013. Rats show a burst after cardiac arrest. Highly synchronized activity, stronger than while awake. 2016. An accidental human recording during an EEG. 2022. Zimmer's team publishes what they found. Gamma waves, surging, right around cardiac arrest. Meanwhile, Parney is aware study interviews survivors directly. Vivid, calm, strikingly similar reported experiences afterward. 3 studies. 3 teams. 1 shared thread. A brain that stays active, engaged, remembering. Right up until its very final moments. That's what the evidence actually suggests, so far. So, back to where we started this video. There's one experience every human eventually shares. For most of history, completely unknowable, hidden. Now, thanks to a strange twist of luck, we have an actual glimpse behind the curtain. Not the full picture, just a glimpse. And what a warm glimpse it turned out. Maybe your brain's very last act is beautiful. Reaching, one more time, for what mattered most. The people you loved, the moments you treasured. Science can't promise that, but it hints gently. And honestly, that's a lovely thing to know.